Naturally, as a football fan, you get excited when your club makes new signings, new players ahead of the new season. It's exciting. You start to imagine where they're going to play, how they're going to play. You assume they're going to improve the team, usually, because it's an exciting thing to do. Maybe more so if your club signs someone you've not really seen play before. Last summer for me was Lucas Paqueta. I'd only seen him a handful of times, and on every occasion it was for Italy, not the Sassuolo. So when we signed Scamacca, I got excited because West Ham had taken 18 months to sign a striker. He cost 35 million. He had a good record. He was young. There was a lot of hype about him. People that watch Italian football were raving about him. And I hadn't really seen him play much. So I was looking forward to discovering Scamacca at West Ham. I got excited. This summer, it's Harvey Barnes at the minute. I'm a little bit excited about the possibility of signing Harvey Barnes. I hope our rumoured interest is true. We do sign him. And then I'll look forward to seeing him in the Claret and Blue at the London Stadium next season. My point is, new signings tend to get football fans excited, naturally. What you tend to not get excited about is players leaving your club. So at the minute, the Declan Rice transfer to Arsenal, lots of Arsenal fans will be getting very excited. I wouldn't really say West Ham fans are excited. Resigned maybe, not that bothered, whatever. Excited, not really. Nikola Vlasic, likely to be leaving West Ham this summer. I'm not that bothered. I'm really not bothered. If he's here next season, fair enough. I hope it works out. If he goes, and I hope he does go, so I say not that bothered, I've just said I have a preference. Bear with me. I have a preference, and that is he does go this summer and we can reinvest the money back in. Hopefully we'll get a few quid for him. But emotionally, it doesn't really do much for me. I'm not really that bothered by it. But my point is, selling players is just as important, arguably more important than buying players. But as football fans, we're only really excited by one side of it. And one thing I've been critical of West Ham for numerous years now is selling players. And it's not so much selling the players we want to sell. So those players that we are actively looking to move on, like Nikola Vlasic, Arthur Masuaku, Issa Diop, Fabian Balbuena. There's various players we've sold over the years that we have tried to sell and we've been able to sell. We tend to do okay at those. Not necessarily value for money. I'm not saying we receive good fees. Not like Ashley Fletcher, we've received a good fee for him. But we can tend to move them on pretty quickly when it suits us. When we want to move players on, they tend to go. Usually not for a good deal, hence why they're able to leave quickly somewhere. But the stars, the players we do not want to sell. I've always had a feeling the club panic. They go into meltdown. So the season before last with Jared Bowen, when he was scoring or assisting pretty much every game, he was linked heavily to Liverpool. And through the unofficial channels, and this is where I have to say in fairness, it's not through the club. Sullivan doesn't go on Talk Sport like he did with Declan Rice and announce to the world they're panicking. But through their unofficial channels, the same ones that we read, watch and listen to when it comes to news, player contracts, players joining your club, for that stuff, they also cover the players' outgoings as well. For the trusted sources, they cover everything. But when it comes to the players going out and they say, oh, top insiders at the club have said this, I don't think you can take everything as gospel and then just dismiss the bit that you don't like because Jared Bowen might be leaving Liverpool. You might not believe any of it, that's fine. But when it comes to players being linked with moves away, players that West Ham do not want to sell, players that have a big role at the club today, I always get this sense of panic. And I hate it. I've absolutely hated it. But Bowen would get linked to Liverpool. You can almost bet your bottom dollar there would be articles over the next couple of days. Bowen is not for sale at any price. Hands off. We've got zero intention of selling. In fact, we're going to give him a new contract. Liverpool apparently want him. Right, get that contract drawn up. We're going to offer him more money and an extra 2 years on his deal. Whatever. We're going to fend off all the interest. And you just got this sense of sheer panic from the club, as if it was a bad thing that big clubs want our big players, as if it was taboo. You're not allowed to talk about it. And I've hated it because while we're okay at moving players on we don't want, what we are rubbish at is selling big players and also selling players at the right time. So take Thomas Souček. I think he's a prime example at this point in time. He's been linked with a move away, got linked to Napoli last week. I think now would be the perfect time to sell him. 2 years to go on his contract. Well, he's got 12 months, but he's got an option for a further year, exactly like Declan Rice. So let's just call it 2 years. He's got 2 years on his deal, late 20s. His market value is probably similar to what we paid, 20 million maybe. His value's only gone downhill from here on in because of his contract situation and his age profile. There is apparently interest in him, and there will be interest in him because he's still a good player. Just because he perhaps hasn't suited the way we've tried to play last season doesn't make him a bad player. He's still a good player, and he's got a lot to offer the right club. So now would be the best time for West Ham to cash in. 20 million is a lot of money, but we won't. Previously, we wouldn't. We'd hang on to him. Next summer, he might go for 8 to 10 million. We might keep him for a further year, and either he leaves on a free or we offer him another contract and he's on 100 grand a week until he's 33 years old or something. The club are rubbish at selling our top players, in my opinion. And I'm hoping Tim Steidten is going to change that. Now, I appreciate we're throwing a lot at Tim. There's a lot of hope on the appointment of Tim Steidten. But why shouldn't there be? Why shouldn't there be? He will be well paid. He has a senior role at a Premier League football club. That comes with big responsibilities. So while all the emphasis, again, naturally, go back to the start of the video, players coming in, far more exciting. There's a lot of emphasis on Steidten changing the way we go about player recruitment, changing the player profile, which is backed up by Kretinsky. I'll give you that in a second, because it's a bit rare you hear from Kretinsky. But bringing in young players, and as fans, you get carried away. So to go ridiculously excited right now, he's called the Pearl Diver, Steidten. So, well, let's see some gems. Let's go buy a player for 10 million and he's worth 50 million in 2 years. It's unrealistic, but that's the hope you carry as a football fan. You're allowed to hope. You're allowed to dream. You're allowed to get carried away. But one hope I've got is that actually we become better at selling players, that we don't have this panic anymore. So when we got linked, when clubs got linked to Lucas Paqueta last week, I thought, oh, I know what's going to happen. He's going to come out and he's going to get a new 5-year deal on 125 grand a week to fend off the interest. And that's how West Ham would do things previously. And I'm hoping with the appointment of Steidten, we just calm down a little bit. And I've been encouraged by the updates surrounding Lucas Paqueta this week with an 80 million price tag. But before we do that, I'm just going to read you the quotes from Kretinsky, otherwise I'll forget. He was speaking to Forbes magazine actually, and he was asked about West Ham winning trophies, plural. We've obviously won the Conference League, so going forward we're going to continue. And his response says, Kretinsky's response was, I don't think West Ham United will go through a phase where we try to fully participate in the arms race. We have to take a quiet, evolutionary path. With good work with young players, good scouting and solid sports management, we should try to build a solid foundation. So that's a bit of an insight into sort of West Ham's transfer policy. It goes hand in hand with the appointment of Steidten. That would suggest that Kretinsky's on the board with the new appointment. Is he the one behind it? I don't know. There's some people have theories that he will be. I've posed the question, how does David Sullivan know about Tim Steidten? No one will convince me Sullivan knew who he was. Someone's told Sullivan. And as off the back of that question I posed in that video, a few people messaged with their theories, and 2 or 3 people had the same one, which is obviously Leverkusen got Adam Hlosek from Kretinsky, so perhaps that's how Kretinsky's come across Steidten, because Kretinsky believed that Hlosek is one of the best young players in European football, and Leverkusen's the club that's gone, well, we'll have him. So he's thought, hang on a minute, clearly this guy is good at scouting youngsters, because I believe he's a top prospect, and Steidten's the one that's picked him out and said I'll buy him. I don't know. I'm just throwing out there. 2 people messaged me with the same theory, and you can't dismiss it, can you? Anyway, back to the point. Selling players. Now, obviously the Declan Rice thing is a very rare example, because I think the club have handled it pretty well, and that was prior to Steidten arriving. But negotiations were undergoing at the time, and I do wonder, in the last few days it feels like West Ham have not changed what they want in terms of the structure or the payments, but it feels like there's been a couple of more clauses being changed by West Ham, including a potential sell-on clause, which wasn't really on the table until Tim Steidten arrived. So you just never know if Steidten's rocked up and said, whoa, you need these clauses, and these non-financial clauses in terms of money from Arsenal, they need to go in there. You just don't know, do you? But anyway, Lucas Paqueta. So ex-West Ham employee did an update yesterday on the West Ham Way podcast. Within that podcast there's a transfer section where X gives the updates on all the latest rumours, and he addressed the Lucas Paqueta rumours, which last week were obviously linking him to PSG. And X, and I'm not quoting him directly here, but he basically said West Ham don't want to sell him, he's not up for sale, they've got no intention of selling him, however the price tag would be 80 million. Now, hypothetically, if that was true, because I know a lot of people perhaps won't believe it, that's fine, that's up to you. But hypothetically, if that was true, I love it. I absolutely love it. If the messaging from the club from now on in regards to Paqueta is he's not for sale, we don't want to sell him, but if you insist on buying him, he's going to cost you 80 million. And I think that's the perfect way to go about embracing interest in the players that you don't want to sell. Having an asking price for a player does not mean you want to sell them. So I don't want to sell, well, I don't know, my calendar. It's on June. Let me change that. Goodbye, Aaron. Who we got in July? Oh, we've got Noble. There we go. Got Noble in July. So I don't want to change I don't want to sell my calendar. I probably should, because, you know, it's the 4th of July and it's still not moved. But anyway, I do not wish to sell this. However, if someone was to say, I'll give you 30 quid for it, I'm selling it, alright? It's not for sale, but I'll sell it. And that's what Lucas Paqueta is. He's not for sale. We don't want to sell him. But 80 million lands on the table, West Ham will sell him. And I think that is absolutely perfect. And like I said, we've been sort of focusing on what Steidten can do in regards of the incomings at the club. But one thing Leverkusen is bloody good at is selling players. Now, Steidten was only in like a senior role for, well, less than a season actually. So it's hard to sort of credit him with the sales at Bayer Leverkusen. I'm not saying he was responsible. In fact, the opposite. I'm going to suggest he wasn't responsible for selling players at Leverkusen. But he was still at the club when they embraced selling their big names. Kai Havertz was the biggest one, 80 million to Chelsea. Last summer they sold Bailey for 32 million to Aston Villa. Leno went to Arsenal for 25 million. Brandt went to Dortmund for 25 million. They don't mind selling players at Dortmund. They don't mind selling their big names, their big stars. I think in the last 5-6 seasons they've sold 300 million pounds worth of players. Now, like I said, Havertz was 80 million, so there's a large chunk of it. But Steidten's been at a club that a lot of people will say, oh, it's a selling club then, selling your best players, a selling club. But I guess it is. But then which club isn't? You know, every club sells players. And I just hate how West Ham go into panic mode. What I would say is Leverkusen getting 8 million for Kai Havertz at the time. You thought, oh, that's a big sale from Leverkusen, taking a bit of risk. Looks like all right business now at this point. I will say I do think Havertz will do well at Arsenal. I'll say that now. I think he's still a top player there. Chelsea, I don't think you should judge anyone what they do or don't like that club at the minute. Regardless, I'm hoping that mentality of not being afraid to sell your top players arrives at West Ham United. Because going by what Kretinsky's suggesting, is that we're not going to spend loads of money. We're not going to throw hundreds of millions at transfers, and we're not going to while he's here. And I think that gives you a bit of an insight into his plans or lack of plans for purchasing 100% of West Ham long term. Because if he did, there's no big transfer kitty rocking up with him or anything like that. That is how we're going to go about it. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good plan to have. It's only a couple of sentences, but essentially we're going to buy young players, and through good scouting and good player recruitment, we're going to build a team. And part of that has to be selling players, generating your own funds, because this club this summer, and again, not everybody believes we've only got the right money to spend. That is fine, but we don't have, I don't know this for sure, but I don't think we've got loads of money to spend. We don't. And we are on the FFP watch list. That part is factual. We are on the FFP watch list of UEFA, and it's a result of high net spend. It's a result of not being able to sell players for a lot of money because we don't have them, or we don't encourage it. We panic. So when we're spending 190 million, 200 million, and we're not really bringing in much, you're going to be in trouble eventually. What we have done in the last 12 months in terms of player sales and players coming in is not sustainable. We cannot do that. That is not a model for a football club. That is, you can do it now and again, but you pay for it eventually. You pay for it further down the line, and we're paying for it this summer. But if we change our mentality when it comes to selling players, and we have good scouting done prior, so in theory, selling Paqueta for 80 million is all very well, but you've got to make sure you've got someone to come in to replace him. You've got to make sure you know who the next guy along the line is. Whether that's Alex Scott or someone else, it doesn't matter. But this has always been a problem with West Ham, which is, look at us now, we're selling Declan Rice. I'm not even sure the club are 100% sure who they're going to go get. We've known Rice has been wanting to leave for about 2 or 3 seasons now, to be honest with you. It's the worst kept secret in football. And this could be incorrect. Maybe the club have got a foolproof plan and just nobody knows about it. But I get the impression that even now, they're still not 100% sure who they're going to go get to replace Declan Rice. And that is unacceptable. So things need to change at West Ham. The way that we go about buying players, or the profiles of players we buy, is one of them. But I think the mentality when it comes to selling players, and I mean the big ones, I think that has to change as well. And this little insight into Paqueta, not for sale, 80 million, absolutely love it. I don't want Paqueta to go. But I'll tell you what, if someone rocked up and paid 80 million, I'm comfortable with that. But let's put an asterisk next to that, which is only if we have a replacement lined up. And that is why there's a lot of pressure on Tim Steidten at the minute. He has to change a lot with this football club when it comes to player sales and players coming in. Anyway, there's my ramble for Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. So when it came out that Paqueta is not for sale, but he's 80 million if you want to buy him, I was delighted actually. I think that's a really, really good thing from West Ham. But if you've enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new to Hammers Chat. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.